Working. All right, let's see if it's working here. Wheeler. Okay, I think it's working. Yep, we're working. Cool. All right, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you, Peachy. And Black Tower, you made it, my man. Good to see you. Hello, Jacob. All right. I noticed I had people actually in there waiting on me. Life happens. We all get busy. That's why replays are beautiful. I should let you all know we are experiencing some pretty heavy winds. They're even like giving all these severe weather warnings for the weekend. All that means is people's going to be outside having beer parties. But it may screw with the internet, just a heads up. But at least this time we shouldn't have the same technical issues we had Sunday due to me not knowing how to, that whole kerbuckle we went through. So, all right. So, for those who don't know, we're going to probably say this a few times through the night because, it's kind of a big deal. For those who have been waiting, the Dragon Magic 101 course will be going live Wednesday. That's this Wednesday. And there's Halloween. Yay, I can't get rid of her. Jacob, it's not that unusual to have an aura changing colors. A lot of people think their aura is this color. And insert whatever it is, and that's it. That's all it's ever going to be. But your aura can shift with the energy around you, the energy you're working with, even your mood. Your aura was essentially the first mood ring. Now, you will have people whose personalities, they give them a aura color that they would have most of the time. But then you do have people, their aura color shifts several times a day. My friend Katrina, I know you've heard me mention her several times before in the different streams. Her clothing and hair changes with her mood. And I mean, throughout the day, I've seen her with 3 hair colors in one day. And her aura is definitely one that shifts constantly. So, yeah. It's just the different energies and stuff. I could say I have seen it shift and change if you've had a guardian or a guide or something like that helping you and tinkering with your energy to help you out throughout the day. I've noticed color fluctuations in those cases too. But still, that comes down to the fact that energy is shifting. I hope that helps. Okay, and the next big thing, the weekly challenges that we talked about Sunday, which I meant to talk about last Friday, but we forgot. Mine went really well. Last week's was about self-care and self-love and, building yourself up that way. I actually decided to go with a rune goldering ritual for mine and take that goldering into a meditation, which seemed to work pretty well for me. And I am not getting messages on this screen. Why am I not getting messages? Okay, weird. Okay, I'll just have to make sure to watch that screen for messages because this screen don't seem to be giving them to me. Crap. Hopefully this one's still giving me messages. Now, throughout my week of doing this, it was kind of interesting because I used 3 runes that I would golder, which was Wunyo, Laguz, and Soilo. And I would golder each one in a roll, and I did so for 9 times, which ended up with 9 golders of each rune. And then I would shift over to meditation and just listen to what the runes had to say at that point. And I will admit, it dug up crap I did not expect. There was just, it's like, you remember this thing? You've not dealt with this. We need to deal with this. And one of the big ones was, I need to be putting myself first a bit more, because even when I think I'm putting myself first, I'm really doing it for others, not really for me. So the focus still isn't me. That was like one of the big ones that kept popping up. And one of them, I mean, I couldn't even argue with. It was take more time to relax and enjoy. Don't work yourself from the time you put your feet on the floor to the time you take them off at night, because yeah, you may enjoy your work, but there's more to life than that. And yeah, I kind of lived the last 3 months that way, really. That's okay, Peachy, because from my understanding, you were plenty busy enough. The challenges are just, something to, if you have time to do them, you can do them, and they give you something to work on, to push yourself and help you out in your practice. Halloween, that is awesome. So you went with Sigil Magic. See, I went with runes because I figured everyone would either go Sigil Magic, Candle Magic, or something like that. So I tried to stay out of the norms for my particular one. I'll admit my first gut reaction was go with a candle spell. So I mean, it's not like I could say anything because that was my gut reaction. Go that direction. Yeah, actually, Halloween, you're manifesting the best self things. Actually, kind of what's going to end up being what inspired me to do this week's. Won't lie. So that's 2 in a row you've inspired without meaning to. I also have been keeping up with the ritual work and continuing to use that ritual that I had been working on that the dragons gave me. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it because it does actually kind of separate you from reality and existence in a lot of ways. But it is a fascinating ritual. Right now, I'm still in the learning phase. So as far as what can you use it for, I don't really have a solid answer. I have a few out there theories, but no answers. And once I get some answers, I'll let y'all know. Right now, I'm mainly using it to work with and talk with the entities the dragons refer as the unknowables, and the closest thing to a name they have is the dragon or the dragoness. So those 2 entities, which is really kind of cool to get a chance to get some face time with them. Other than that, I've been spending a lot of time getting the Dragon Magic 101 up and going. Luckily, we caught some things during the video reviews. Oh, Lord, if those had gone live, I'd have been embarrassed. One of them, I just put the raw video up. I don't know what happened because I keep them in separate folders, but the raw video went up. So it was a video of me sneezing, coughing, and at one point, I even fell out of the chair. So I am so glad I found that. Because there's a part of me that's like, I don't need to review these. I've reviewed them while I was editing. And then I found that, and it's like, this is why you don't skip the review step right here. Hey, Mathis. So, and yeah, I should have all the video fully reviewed by tomorrow night. Easy. Yes, you did. You made it. So now my Patreon members did actually have a chance to get in, and the stuff that's already been reviewed and up, they were able to go ahead and get in early and start playing around with that. So a few of them are already in there experiencing that first half of the class. And if I missed anything, I'm hoping they'll be nice enough to be like, hey, Drake, you might want to look at that. So we'll see. Which on that comment, Mathis, if you want to, because you are a Patreon member, message me after the stream in the Discord. If you're interested in getting in early. If you just want to wait till Wednesday, that's cool too. And for my Discord members, I am actually considering taking some of those hilarious little antics and slapping them into like a I can't believe this is actually on film video and sticking that on my Discord. Hey, Colt, you made it. No, you need your arcane sight to see them, but you do need your arcane senses, at least as far as hearing. For some people, when you open that third eye, all their arcane senses will open naturally together. That is weird, Mathis. I put it in both the Discord and the Patreon thing. So, yeah, just message me afterwards. We'll get you handled out there, man. But yeah, so if they don't all open naturally with the third eye connected, which isn't unusual, honestly, it's more often than not they don't. You will have to train them individually. So to hear spirits, you need to train your arcane hearing. And if you go to my video on the arcane senses, the reason I break them up instead of just saying arcane senses is because there's more than often people need to train them individually. And there's actually some exercises in there that will help you train your arcane hearing so that you can communicate and hear spirits. Which, if you're seeing them, I'm actually a little surprised you can't hear them. It's usually the other way around. I mean, it's not impossible, your situation. I have seen it, but statistically, people hear them before they see them. $10 a.m. and you're still up? Woo! Okay. See, I'm a night person, but usually by 6 a.m. at the latest, unless I have something to do, my butt's in bed. So, well, I'm glad you could join us. Now, and before I forget, because if anyone's watched this stream more than a time or two, y'all know I forget crap. Okay, because I've always been able to hear and sense things that normally people can't. Yes, Silverhawk. Yes, I have. And I'm glad you preface that with really scared, because the first thing that popped in my head is the ritual I told you all where I got startled and jumped back so quick that not only did I jump back to my body from the soul travel, but I kept moving. So I actually jumped back into like the bookcase when I opened my eyes. But that was more of a startled reaction. So you're saying like really scared. Yes, I have. Last year when I was working with the cliff off, it takes a lot to get to me. I've seen enough in my real life that the spirit world really doesn't bother me. I know that sounds a little messed up, but that's the truth. However, during one of these rituals, it was actually a ritual of healing and cleansing. So these are the kind of rituals I go into, and I think the worst case scenario is I'm going to have to face something of myself that I don't like. And I've done enough shadow work, I've got used to that. Other than that, healing rituals usually aren't bad. So no big deal, right? Well, this one had another ideal, because in this ritual, and there are situations where, people's like, if it gets weird or something, just come out of the meditation. Well, if you go far enough into the meditation and you make a specific request of an entity, there are extreme and rare cases where just come out of meditation is not an option. And you usually don't get a warning. And this was one of those cases, because at that point, multiple forms of flying insects and spiders with wings, which, by the way, should just not be allowed on any level whatsoever. No, even in the bowels of hell, that should not be allowed. Began to fly into every orifice I got, up my nose, in my mouth, my ears, everywhere, and even like crawling in around my eyes, filling me up completely inside and beginning to consume me from the inside out. That hands down was one of the truly most terrifying experiences, because I could feel them crawling on me and in me, as well as the biting sensations and the stinging. Which overall, the whole experience probably took 3 or 4 minutes. But from my perspective, that was an eternity. I'm serious. It was just horrid. And once it was over, it did take me a good while to gather myself up and, calm down, bring my heart rate down, calm my breathing. But it did do exactly what it was supposed to do, and it did bring about a great deal of healing and other things. It's just the process used was freaking terrifying. And I would say that to this day, that is the ritual that absolutely terrified me the most. It turned out great, honestly. I mean, like I said, that path working was beneficial all the way. I can't think of one spot in the path working where it wasn't beneficial and it wasn't helpful. But at no point can I say, yeah, that was easy. There's a reason I tell people, if you're not certain and you're not sure, don't work the cliff off. And normally I say, if you want to learn magic, jump in and get dirty. I don't say that with the cliff off. I really do not. If you want to work the cliff off, don't start there in your magical career. Get a good, solid understanding of the nuts and bolts of magic. Do a few path workings. Definitely do some shadow work. Try some of the harsher stuff that's on this side of the cliff off, on the easier side, before you dive into that, because it's not like other path workings where there's a pause button, because unless they decide to push the pause button, there is no pause button. And even when they pause it, there's still no pause button. Because like right now, y'all know I started this year with the Cliffothic working, and the two spheres I worked in are still very dominant energies right now, even though, yeah, Lilith and Samiel's like, okay, stop here, go to this other stuff, come back this fall. So, yeah, those energies are still actually there, even though they themselves paused them. Shadow work, Jacob, in a nutshell, it's where you face your dark side. All the things that you hide from the world, the waking world, and even yourself. You face them, you work with them, you come to understand those aspects of yourself, and you actually bring a balance between you and them. They're not something that needs to be banished or gotten rid of, but they are aspects of our personalities that maybe we're ashamed of or we're not proud of. There are darker thoughts even, and they actually do serve a purpose. And a lot of that is also triggered and created from certain traumas in our life. So shadow work helps to face, deal with, and bring all that back and to make you a whole entity again. So it's some of the harsher work because you will be facing the stuff that you fear, the stuff that you hate. And for many of us, because we don't do shadow work till later in our lives, we get to face all the trauma we've had. So the first time you do shadow work's always the hardest. And then after that, it gets easier because you don't have as much baggage to deal with. I actually do shadow work twice a year personally. Just because it took so much to get through my first run. I was like, I ain't letting baggage build up no more. It's kind of like when we started moving for the military so much, I stopped keeping things. I'm just at the point where if it doesn't get used within a certain point, I don't think about it. I just toss it. Because, yeah, I'm done with the baggage. Now, Jacob, that's a little trickier. Generally speaking, shadow work is a long process, and it also requires at least a minimum of deep trance work. The first time my students approach it, what I do, I use a process. It's found in Christopher Pencak's Temple of Shamanic Witchcraft. He has a process in there. It's not quite shadow work, but it's called Distilling the Shadow. And it's great for like if you're thinking about shadow work because it's a very easy process where you ease into the shadow working and you start dealing with it in little pieces. It's like you're chipping off one little piece of stone at a time and dealing with it. So generally with my students, I have them do that for a few months before we actually dive into shadow work directly. But if you are interested in shadow work, that book by Christopher Pencak, which I usually have in the links below my videos because it actually is one of the books I recommend for beginners. It's a really great way to start that process. It really is. And it goes deeper into shadow work, but it's very passive. It's not like an active shadow working. But beyond that, you actually would need to find a full shadow working course or process, which is a bit more than I can explain on a YouTube video. And actually, I wonder if YouTube would even actually let me walk somebody through that in a video because it can get personal and weird. So I'm pretty sure I'd throw up a violation somewhere. I'm not going to lie. Julius, that's actually a good question. And good and evil, when you look at the multiverse, good and evil are actually a human concept. And it is a matter of perspective. I know people don't like that. I know people hate that. But that is kind of the reality. Because think about it. From a fly's perspective, a spider is evil. And from the gazelle's perspective, the lion is evil. Demons themselves, no. And even from a human perspective, after working with them and getting to know them, I would actually say no, demons are not evil. Now, don't get me wrong. There are entities, there are low levels entities throughout the multiverse, or even just really just nasty spirits of human beings that wander this earth. And those are the ones that generally tend to cause the trouble and get labeled as demons. And since no one ever draws a line between what a demon is and what these things are, demons just overall got a bad rap. But no, demons in and of themselves are not necessarily evil. I would say they're a bit more chaotic, if anything. They do have a darker energy and they are very chaotic. But 9 times out of 10, you approach them, they're more than willing to help you, not because they get some out of it, but because they would like to see you as an individual gain your own power and strength. Now, that said, they are so chaotic that they do sometimes come across reckless, but it's not their recklessness, it's actually our recklessness that's the problem. A lot of magicians will run up to a demon and ask for knowledge or something that they're not ready for. And it's essentially like a 3-year-old running up and asking to play with a grenade. And the demon's like, okay, it's your choice. Whereas a deity or something else might be like, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me explain to you why this is a bad idea. And they'd lay out the process and why you shouldn't be playing catch with a grenade. And then you'd be like, okay, I need to learn this other stuff before I do that. Okay, cool. A good chunk of your demons will be like, no, here, go play catch with this. But that's the downside, is they're just so willing to accept our free will. So well, Anonymous, we'll have to agree to disagree there, because honestly, I have seen nothing to actually believe me in an absolute good and evil. And as I have spent years actually researching that. So, Julius, I will preface that when I say demons are not evil, it is absolutely from my experience. I have never seen anything to make me say that they are evil blanketed, nor that the multiverse itself actually has that. Well, pictures do have the power to create a connection between the person in the picture and the energy that you're wanting to work with. So it's not uncommon for a healing spell to utilize a picture, for example, because that creates a stronger connection with the individual you're trying to heal. And a lot of hoodoo magic works along that same practice. It uses those pictures as a connection with the person. So, yeah. So, okay. Let's see. Thank you, Will. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate it. Trying to catch up on this crap. The chat's going wonky. Actually, yeah, that is one reason it is popular to burn those pictures. Now, granted, I know that girls have probably been popularly burning those pictures since the 60s, easy. But there are a lot of people who think that it got its start from certain forms of hoodoo and root magic and the likes, which I would agree with, because if you were to go to many practitioners and say, I need a spell to get over this person, burning pictures and the stuff they have is actually one of the ways that they're going to tell you to do it. In fact, if anyone remembers the show Friends, there was actually a whole episode where one of the girls actually suggested they all do that. So, yeah. And it was in a mystical way that it was presented in that show. So it's whichever one everybody thought was cuckoo for being mystical. Yeah. I do believe there was something in Sabrina like that. Yeah. You're right. Linda from Caffeine and Chaos, who does Magical Coffee Hour with me, she made me watch that show. She uses that as her one of her pop culture references a lot when she throws questions at me. Exactly, Occult. Yep. Well said. It helps to break that energy. It helps break that connection. And it also helps to prevent you from reconnecting, because that's something I've seen a lot of people do. They'll do a lot of work doing cord cuttings and the like, but then they'll grab a memento and like dwell on the good times, and that just reestablishes those links. Fire is a wonderful purifier, no doubt there. It and water are two of my favorites for purifying. It will not let me in. Let me in the chat. Oh, well. Okay, it won't let me in. Okay. So. Um. 1 second on that, actually. Okay, well, I can tell you right now, when it comes to human sacrifice, I'm pretty much against it all around. And I've actually never had an entity hand over any form of working of any kind where human sacrifice was a requirement. Though I do know in ancient cultures that was practiced in different ways, which generally ended up being religious in manner. And most of you all know I'm kind of anti-formal religion because of that. The androchrome, that's actually not a word I'm overly familiar with or not recalling at this moment. But I'm also a big believer that you shouldn't have to ingest anything to get your rituals to work. Again, this comes to where the magician and the mage should actually be able to harness the power in and of their own selves. Well, for once, Anonymous, you and I agree, because, yeah, animal sacrifice is also something I don't agree in. The only time I will butcher an animal is for food. So, yeah. That's one place I do agree with you. But no, Mathis, in those cases, yeah, it's definitely one where it's better for the magician to learn to trust themselves and rely on their practices. Now, that said, I will say that for those spiritual or religious groups, I think it's better for the magician to develop the skills and the talent to do it on their own facilities without some kind of an aid. But I do still support the Native Americans to do their ritual and cultural practices and maintain that heritage, because that is a slightly different thing there. Actually, I disagree in karma entirely, Anonymous. I don't believe in it. Oh, well, yeah, okay, I understand that. Yeah, no, hell no, don't drink that. If it harms a child in any shape, form, or fashion, I'm very much against it. Or if it's utilizing a child in some way, and yeah, if you're siphoning off their adrenaline, that's not good. I mean, I ain't seen the science data on it, but you siphon off a adrenalized blood, that's got to have a developmental effect. That has to. So yeah. So. Well, that's going down a bit more of a philosophical route, occult. And honestly, you kind of have to figure that out for yourself, and honestly, within the culture you live in. Because I know here in the States where we live, there's a lot of things that are very much against the law. And then there are things in other parts of the country where those are not against the law. And those have to be taken into account. And this is where personal responsibility and morale come into effect, or morality. And, everyone does have their own personal ethics. That doesn't give you a carte blanche to go doing whatever you want, though. Yeah, we got neck deep into philosophy up in this joint. So, yeah, I mean, and that's one of the hardest parts, because you do kind of run into those, what's right and wrong, but that does come down to personal morality, raping and stealing all that you want. And his answer to the person was, I do those things all that I want. And that's because he doesn't want to do them, because he, as a moral person, as he sees it, doesn't do those. So, and he's atheist. So you know, yeah, those things are in the air and can be philosophized forever. And I would bet, even those of you who know me pretty well and probably consider me a friend, we could probably sit there and hash this out all night and never come to an agreed upon conclusion, because everyone's going to have a different point of view on at least one topic. Again, Occult, you're asking, that's kind of like the meat eater versus vegan debate. It really is. I honestly eat close to an all meat diet. I'm not big on eating vegetables. And that said, for the vegans out there, as long as they stay off my case, I support them in their life choices. Now, I'm against animal abuse. In most cases, I like animals better than humans. And that, so, all the slaughterhouses and stuff that I buy from, I try to make sure that they use humane methods. I am also a hunter. And, all those things can go into that thing. You just have to figure it up for yourself. There are decisions a man has to make for himself. Peachy, that's a good question. Certain days and times it has to be done. No. Do those days and times add a layer to the spell or working that can actually boost its power? Yes. I honestly rarely wait for a day or time to do a specific magic, because I'm not a patient person. That's one of the reasons I don't work with the moon phases as much as people think. And it's because if I have a spell and a need, I'm going to go do the spell and need. Now, if there just happens to be the right day, the right moon or something within 24 hours time, I'm not in a rush. I might go ahead and piggyback off it just for the boost. But I won't postpone anything more than a day if I need it done. And a lot of magics, you can't wait. I mean, I done 2 spells this week that were an emergency for clients, and there wasn't time to wait. So they were done. And both of them have already manifested. So, and yeah, the times a day, again, same thing. You don't have to do them at those times, but if you're using the planetary or astrological times, they can add a layer of power to your spell. Now, those I do occasionally use more, because at best you're just waiting a few hours for that time to come around. The big ones I use is day and night, and it's more me than the times themselves. I actually find it's easier for me to focus and do my workings at night if I have to, and that's because of where I live. As y'all know, if I try to film during the day for anything, it's just noise, noise, noise. Good night, Occult, man. Take it easy. And that's actually very accurate. Jacob, there are there is areas of Druidism that refer to a lot of the aspects of nature as the dragon, and therefore dragon's breath. In fact, if you watch the old movie Excalibur, Merlin talks about the dragon in there. And in fact, most of the articles and stuff that talk about this form of dragon magic, they actually take quotes from that movie. So this is one of those cases where you're using terminologies and everything. Now, why it's considered protection? Personally, I've never found fog protective. I have found it more of kind of more of a subtlety, more of a hiding type thing, which I can see how that would be viewed as protection. And in the movie Excalibur, Merlin does summon up the fog to cover Arthur's army so that they can attack. I want to say it was Mordred. It's been way too long since I've seen that movie. It's an old movie. Good movie, though, if you can find it. Give it a watch. As far as, but I'm going to say it's pulling from that druidic view of it. It's not something I've actually directly encountered in Dragon Magic, but I don't work with the druidic side of it. And from my understanding, their view is different. They don't view dragons so much as dragons. But it's not something I've been able to get a lot of research on just yet. I'm hoping to one day, though. Well, Julius, this mere mortal, all I do is I harness the energies directly and shape them for what I want. Planetary energies are energy, just like any other energy that we harness. So if you were to harness the energy of fire, earth, water, air, any of those, it's still just an energy current. And it is how that energy current interacts directly within your sphere of influence that affects you. So if you check out my video on Mercury retrograde, I talk about how I actually take and harness that energy actually on a universal level. So I'm actually pulling all those energy currents into one spot, and I'm affecting their influence on me. And I'm shaping that influence on me and directing it toward the goals I wish to achieve. And this is honestly how I pretty much avoid Mercury retrograde. And I did that video because I get a lot of questions why you don't see me talk about it. Mercury retrograde is just not a thing I even have to deal with. And that's something I do on a daily basis, not just during Mercury retrograde, because yeah, I use my magic to guide my life and to better myself and those of my family. So, I mean, if I wanted something that was the will of something else, I'd still be in religion. And nope, it's my will or not. If I wasn't able to manifest my will, I would not be a practitioner right now. My practice is results based. So check out that video. It breaks it down a little bit better. But yeah, it's when you see it something massive as such a planet, it is hard. But when you realize it is just an energy current like any other, and you can shape its influence around you, suddenly that current becomes something very, very small and controllable. Again, Anonymous, you're speaking of your opinion. There's a lot of people who view sorcery and magic as the same. Oh, soap bubbles. I'm not sure I could count that. Because as far as I can tell, for any energy current you can locate, there are dragons that work within it. I've not found an energy current yet that dragons don't work in. And since energy currents can break apart for practically anything that exists, that number just starts getting exponentially large. When we talk about dragon magic and the 9 elemental rulers, that infinite amount of energy currents, if you distill it down to a base, will somewhere cross one or more of those elements. So you do have certain energy currents that cross more than just one of those elements. But yeah. And because of that, the number and types of dragons gets to be way more than I can count. There might be a mathematician out there that can count that high. Jacob, it could just mean that either they want to work with you or perhaps they have a lesson for you. Being drawn to an entity, it could just be something, as far as working with and learning. So, yeah. Because I've worked with Lucifer during my time in the Cliff Off. I honestly found him quite enjoyable to work with. He's not someone I work with on a daily basis by any means. Odin, on the other hand, I do work a lot with, and I enjoy working with him. I enjoy talking to him about wisdom and everything, and learning magic and the secrets of the runes from him. But yeah, it's just they may have. It's one of those things where you have to find out what it is they're wanting to teach you, and they could just be in your life for a short period, and or you could build a relationship and a friendship with them that ends up being lifelong. Because there are entities I've worked with, they had only like one lesson to teach me, but at the same time, we did build a friendship, and I actually end up still talking to them and or using them as a sounding board, but I don't really, you wouldn't call it really in-depth work that I do with them anymore. So, I mean, that's one of those things that everyone has their own little personal path. But generally, on a larger view, it means that they have at least some information for you or some lesson that they could be passing on of some kind. No problem, Julius. No problem. Honestly, Mercury retrograde, it's one of those things. A lot of people freak out about it. But most of the colleagues I have, none of us have any issues with it. In its essence, the entirety of Dragon Magic, accountability, responsibility, self-reliance, and balance. Those are definitely the key focuses there. Beyond that, it is about solid friendships and relationships with the entities. It's not about giving up your will or any of that. It's actually, that's self-reliance. You can't have that if you don't have free will of decisions. But the big word in Dragon Magic will always come back to balance. That is their focus. Nothing wrong with that, Anonymous. It's a good goal. Definitely a good goal. It's not a mystical book or anything, but on philosophy-wise, I loved it. Bonnie Sanders' Modern Bushido. If you haven't, give it a read. He covers issues like thought, honor, morality, family, oaths, all those old things in there, and very philosophical breakdowns. And he even gives you quotes to meditate on. Fascinating book. I loved reading through it. Yeah, Jacob. Yeah, you can call out to an entity through meditation. Actually, early in my practice, that was the primary I used because I grew up in the church. And prayer and meditation is always how they taught you to talk to God. So when I first started realizing entities were reaching out to me, at that early in my practice, I didn't have anything. All I was learning was herb magic and candle magic. And I didn't know how to use any of that crap to contact something or place a phone call, as it were. So I fell back on what I knew. And it wasn't long I learned that that's exactly how most people do it starting out, is through meditation. So yeah, you can definitely use meditation. And when you get into that deep meditative state that converts over to trance work, you can take that up to the next level even. Oh yeah, let me see if my little, I know this computer's not receiving chat. Actually, I can do you one better. That's actually the book right there. But I'll go ahead and type the title in just in case. Fascinating little read. I won't say I agree with everything, but it's more about thought and training yourself to think for yourself, which is vitally important. So it does get a lot of those nice philosophical things out. Julius, actually, I do have a video on contacting entities and deities on the channel that kind of goes into how my process. But what I would do at this point is get you a copy of the Eye of Horus, use that, have it with you during the meditation, and spend at least a couple meditations just reaching out, feeling for that energy. And if you feel a good connection with the energy your first time, that's fine. You can even start asking questions at that point, even if it's, are you there? Are you reaching out to me? Is this why I'm dreaming of the Eye of Horus? Those kinds of things. Meditation is a great medium to do this. And it's not as super mystical as people might think, because all you do is get into that meditative state, you lock that image in your mind, you focus on it, and you focus on your goal, which in this case would be reaching out and contacting Horus. And then once you get that connection, it's just you start focusing on the questions you want to ask. Beyond that, I would say take some time to learn grounding and shielding, because sometimes when you contact an entity, it's not that anything bad's going to happen. It's just the energy's so high, it may give you the shakes or some kind of, an energy high, like you've had too much caffeine or something. And it's good to be able to know how to ground that out, which again, I did do a video on basic grounding and shielding as well. But worst case scenario, if you just go eat some food, I know it sounds stupid, but it's so mundane, and that food will help pull that excess energy out as well. First time I heard that, I did not think it would work. I didn't. No problem, Anonymous. It's an interesting little book. He has a few more that I'm wanting to read. I haven't got a chance to read them. Now, for those who have been asking, yes, we are actually working on the Norse magic classes. So hopefully those won't be too far off. I don't have an ETA on them, but I do know that they are currently working. We are getting them fully outlined and everything. And hopefully we're going to start shooting within the next couple weeks or so. And Peachy, I actually saw that you put a 103 up there. Was you asking about the Dragon Magic 103 class? Peachy, yes, you can. The biggest thing is usually they only last so long before the energy's drained out of them. So they do kind of need to be recharged. So yeah. But yeah, Peachy, you can do that. I usually don't encourage people to rely on them solely, but they are handy because, you know, even our shields throughout the day need a refresher. So it's good to have that backup. Yeah, there will be a form of shadow work that will be in the Dragon Magic 103 class. There would be no way I could actually do that section of the path working without doing some form of shadow work. So yeah, it'll be in the 103. Hey, Nightmaw. Nightmaw. Yeah, you can work with Tiamat and Dragon Magic, no problem. She is one of the more confusing dragons because people do have a hard time placing her because she is also viewed as a goddess in many mythologies. So, but yeah, you can work with her in Dragon Magic. Most people would actually categorize her as a chaos dragon and quite a powerful one at that. So seeing her as something on level of a goddess is not very difficult at all. And when it comes to an entity that crisscrosses like that, it's one of those where my opinion is, you know, whichever way you view and approach the entity, if it works for you, more power to you. But all Dragon Magic practitioners I know who've approached her, they've worked with her just fine with no issues. And I know a few of them that's even approached her as a member of those religious style pantheons. I'm wanting to say it's either Sumerian or Babylonian that she's tied to. But and again, they still don't really have any issues. But I will say the energies that she does work with, they can get pretty intense. I know a lot of people say she's definitely not a beginner entity. From a book I recently read, if her energy flows from that, I would definitely say she's not a beginner's entity. But I've not encountered her directly enough that I'd feel safe saying a beginner should or should not work with her. Yeah, you can do bodily enchantments. People do that. Some people enchant tattoos. Some people enchant their teeth, actually, which that actually just makes that just makes me think of someone grinding on my teeth. That just I can no. So you can I would say be careful with that though because I've seen some enchantments go wonky on an item and it kind of affects the item. So I'd be really careful enchanting your body. The tattoo thing I understand because it ties it more less to the body, more to the tattoo, even though it is on the body. But it's still a gray area there. Very gray and iffy. Honestly, the most effective form of shadow work is the one you will and can complete. Because it doesn't matter how effective others have found it. If you're not willing to do the work and you're not going to complete it to begin with, it ain't going to work. And some of them are really harsh. And there's some people, they just can't handle the really harsh ones. So they'll never complete them. So no matter how effective they are, if they're not completing them, it's pointless. That's one reason I recommended Christopher Pencak's book, because where he does kind of do that nice little build up and that moving through, it's a lot easier than some. I even know one Reiki practitioner who uses Reiki to do a form of shadow work. And I've heard a lot of people say that it's not shadow work, it's too light, they're not dealing with the darker issues. And there could theoretically be a case for that, but at the same time, if it's helping them deal with some level of that shadow, it's at least making progress, and it's getting the person ready for deeper shadow work. And you could even make a case for, even the real light ones where you're just shaving off like the smallest, thinnest, wafer thin layer of the shadow at a time. Might take a long time, but eventually you'll get through it. So yeah, it's the one you will do and will complete that's going to be the most effective. Oh, no problem, Nightmare. Beginner entities, see that again, that gets personal. Because it's gotta be an entity that you're okay working with. But generally speaking, you like the major entities and pantheons that you see around, like Greek, Roman, and them are usually pretty easy to approach because these entities are very used to working with humans. And you do need to do your research, because just because they're easy to approach don't mean that they can't be dicks. But yeah, do your research and approach something like that. And I mean, I've said it before, if you're interested in dragon magic, it's actually pretty approachable for beginners. But I mean, looking from a Norse perspective, both Freya and Freyr are very, very beginner friendly to approach, as is Thor, actually. He's very much a blue collar god. He has no problem getting down and dealing with the common folk. I found Odin to be very approachable. I've had people disagree with me on that because he is very direct to the point, and this is how it is. Deal with it. So I can see how that might be a put off for a beginner. But yeah, it's just you got to think about that personality of the entity, because what's beginner friendly for one person could very well just be that the personality of you and that entity click, and you just understand each other. Just like, that how you meet that person you just instantly become friends with. And then there can be an entity that's really easy to work with, but their personality puts you off and drives you batshit crazy, and you're not going to want to work with them. So research is a huge part of that. And me and Odin, like I said, it's all that knowledge and magic. We both have a thirst for it, so we can sit and talk for hours on end about it. Yeah, Freya is wonderful. I love working with her. I mean, she has taught me a lot, and she's been a real help in my life. Do I have a few methods of shadow work. I mean, I've used a lot over the years. I think I have 4 or 5 that I primarily focus on now. Last year, I used one that worked with Helheim directly, as well as the goddess Hel. That one, the ritual's easy, but the working itself is so freaking intense. It's crazy. But again, it's one of those things where, so there's, but that you could label that as a descent into the underworld kind of ritual. Oh, well, yeah, Halloween. That's actually reasonable. You want to generally speaking, as a beginner, um, the more chaotic, unpredictable ones, in most cases, are probably the better ones to not start with, because even if they have your best interest at heart, they may take a very chaotic and even sometimes harsh path to completing that goal. One good example to this is Loki. I love working with Loki. My wife works with Loki. That said, I know people who's worked with him as a beginner entity and they enjoyed it. They did. At no point can they say everything made sense. They can't. But then I know people who started working with him and they hated it. They absolutely hated it, because everything was so chaotic, nothing made sense, and in some cases they felt they were not making progress, and it was just so chaotic and so turbulent that they didn't see the progress they was making, and it really put them off to practice at all. But at the same time, they did come back to practice working with another entity, and that entity pointed out all the things that Loki had already put into play for them. And later in their practice, when they went back again to work with Loki with more understanding and experience, they actually enjoyed working with him. But there was a good probably 6, 7 years where they didn't want nothing to do with Loki after that first encounter. So yeah, and that's why I say research your entity, learn about them, learn about their myths, their legends, their history, and this is an important one: the culture that they come from. A lot of people research the god and not the culture, which can get you in a lot of trouble, because if you look at the Norse myths in the prose edits by Snarly Sturluson, those have a heavy, heavy Christian influence. And then if you look at the poetic edits, which has far less Christian influence, is more closer to the actual Scandinavian, the gods are presented in a much, much different light. And you realize Loki isn't a satanic devil figure that he's painted at in the poetic edits. So you have to understand those aspects. And even more so, because now with the invention of the internet, you have people who they're just going up there posting anything they want about an entity. And I mean, I've seen people literally state that the giantess Agrabota is the caring, loving mother who loves all, even the unlovable. Now, for those who don't know who Agrabota is, she is the mother of Loki's children, and she is known as the Sorrow Bringer, the Destroyer. Those are her titles. She was, if you actually look into the Scandinavian myths, she is not a good person. There is not a good thing stated about her anywhere. So I would think posting that, she's the love, the mother who can love anyone, that's kind of doing a disservice and dangerous. I would say every religion has its problems. You want my honest opinion. But yeah, if you just study the entity, its lore, its myths, and look into the culture, you'll get a good idea of what you're getting ready to dive into. And then from there, go into meditation, because meditation puts a nice buffer zone between you and the entity. And you can start having those conversations, asking questions, working with that energy. And just like when you approach a person and the person has an energy that's like, okay, this person's interesting. I want to get to know this person better. Or they have an energy that's like, nope, stay away from me. Same thing would apply here. And you're going to have an idea of how you and that entity might get along. And that's one reason I put so much value on that personal gnosis concept, because there's a lot of entities, absolutely great entities out there that I just don't get along with. And it's not their fault. It's not my fault. It's literally just general personality conflict. Neither one of us is the bad guy here. It's just that first law of magic, know thyself. But you're right, Halloween, that was a lot easier to point out what ones to avoid. That was I know a lot of people who dislike him. I do. The few times I've worked with him, he's never given me any issues, so I can't say anything about him. Good. Other than that, most of the people I know who work with him have a really good experience with him. But I don't know. He's one that I've worked with the least. Well, maybe not the least, but I don't work with a lot at all. And it's just, I don't know, it's just never popped up in my head to work with him. So other than his appearances in the Clefothic workings, I don't really deal with him too much. Well, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Hecate can be intense. Wonderful goddess to work with, has a lot of wisdom and knowledge to teach, but she doesn't do things in small measures usually. So she is pretty intense, and she is definitely labeled as a dark goddess because she does work with the night and those darker, denser energies. But yeah, a lot of people, they get quite a fright or a start from her first time around. Rost, I have worked with King Paimon a few times. I've actually worked with him more than Lucifer, and I've actually enjoyed it. In fact, when I did my working with Azazel, I made a point to work with Paimon in several times along that period because so many people say they're the same entity. I don't agree that they're the same entity. I really don't. Their energies are far too different. They have similarities, but then so many, I mean, entities have similarities. That's going to happen. I mean, people have similarities. Um, I mean, for heaven's sakes, if you saw a picture of my dad, I look a lot like my dad. Our personalities are even similar, but I'm not my dad. He enjoyed farming and working in hayfields. You can't pay me to do that. But I really did enjoy working with him when I worked with him. Grimoire, I worked with twice. When I was path working, we were testing a method of path working through the Goetia, me and another colleague. And in order to test it, we had to work through all the spirits, and Grimoire was naturally one of the ones we had to work through. So I don't have a lot of experience working with him. Actually, I'll be honest with you, I can't even remember the personality right now. I remember working with him, but that's about it. I mean, I'd love to be able to sit back and say I have a full library of knowledge in my head on all the entities of the Goetia, but I don't. Like I said, I've path worked with them. I enjoyed most of them, but they're not entities I work with on a regular basis. I can't say I have a long-term functioning relationship with them. So, and that's one thing if I don't know it, I try to tell y'all, because I enjoy working with a lot of entities, and my curiosity will get me. Somebody will say something, and I'll find some information, and I'll go either meet the entity through trance work or evocation and try and learn about them. But most of my work is actually based on that friendship and allies, where I actually build the relationships, the friendships, and I make an ally out of them. So those are the entities I tend to know the best, because just like anyone else, you're going to know your friends the best. If you want to talk to somebody, that's who you're going to go to, is your friends. But that said, I do read a lot, which is why I usually have some form of answer. You know, Ross, that was my experience. I heard he's hard to work with, but I found him very easygoing when I approached him. In fact, when I first approached him, everybody said you always have to call him king or lord. So of course, I'm doing all the, being respectful. I'm always respectful, but I'm making sure to always use the king or lord title. And at one point, he looked at me and was like, "Would you please stop that? It's getting annoying." And I was like, "What?" But okay. So I'm not going to say don't call him king or lord, but yeah, if he asks you to not do it, don't do it. But if you approach them respectfully, I've never had an issue as long as I approached them respectfully. All my issues have come from my own stupidity. I would say trance works the easiest way. Now, I know somebody might disagree with me, but I find trance work is actually easier because meditation and visualization is the core of trance work. So all you have to do is get into that deep meditative state, and as long as you can visualize the path working process in your mind, you're good to go. And then it's just about opening those arcane senses in your mind to receive the information as it comes. Whereas evocation, there's a lot more atmospheric effects that can affect you, and it's a very physically active process as well. So staying down in that state to receive the information while doing it can be trickier. So yeah, I generally start my students in trance work. And I know some people, they only use trance work. That's their favorite method. That's all they've ever used, and it works perfectly for them. And the biggest argument I've heard is trance work can take longer to manifest, and most everyone I know is like, it's manifest fast enough for me, I'm good. So Yeah, if trance work's all you ever want to use, you can. So, yeah. I mean, people underestimate the power of trance work. I'm actually wanting to do a video on that. Because if you think about it, trance work is the bulk of a shaman's arsenal in many cases. And I don't think anyone would deny the power that the shamans have. I mean, they can accomplish amazing things. So, yeah, trance work is awesome. Azazel, me and Azazel get along. I won't lie though; he does seem to be very direct to the point and get it done. And he doesn't like any tomfoolery most of the time. I mean, he'll joke around, but when it comes time to work, he wants to focus on the work. And really, that kind of suits my personality. I'm a very logical, results-based kind of personality. So yeah, me and Azazel get along there. But I have heard people say Azazel can be rough, but I enjoyed it. I really did. I enjoyed my time working with him. Yeah. Halloween, I can attempt to do that. Actually, astral travel and trance work's really hard to differentiate because trance work goes into a deep meditative state where traveling the astral is very much possible. Therefore, it is essentially a form of astral travel. Um, and you can travel the planes, you can speak with the spirits and all that stuff from a trance work like state. Um, and you can get the communications and the manifestations you need, all those wonderful things. Astral travel, where most people want to draw the line between astral travel and trance work, is it starts with leaving the body in an astral form as opposed to starting with just visualization, even if you're getting the same results. So people kind of draw that line there. That's why I said those two are hard to separate. But in all honesty, how you experience the planes in both is, I've never been able to tell difference. I'll be honest with you. I've never been able to tell difference in how you experience the planes in either one of those. Now, soul travel, there's the one where I did notice a difference, because that's the one where your spirit, energy, body, and consciousness does consciously separate from your physical vessel for a time period. And it's also the hardest one to do and maintain. But when you're experiencing the other realms and things, it's not muted at all. If anything, I'd say your senses are even heightened. You can actually experience it on a much, much higher level. So that's the general breakdown that I would draw the lines on. I've never heard it referred to as an element, but I have heard of an energy current dealing with twilight, but never as an element. The Moondragon, again, no. I know dragons that work with the moon, but as far as the Moondragon, again, no. Not saying there isn't one, because there's usually some head of a flight. So if the Moondragons are considered a singular group or flight of dragons, there's got to be someone in charge. So in theory, there could be one very easily. I just can't say that I've ever met them, but I have heard of Moondragons. I have worked with them, just not a singular one. Yeah, their energy is very, very soothing. Smooth is a good word for it. It really is. Though I have found Moondragons actually on both sides of the light and dark elements. But either way, they still seem to somehow manage that smoothness about them. Yeah, I've worked with the Void a few times. Do I celebrate the Sabbats? Well, that's a good question. Yes and no. I'm not really good at celebrating holidays in a magical manner at all. And that's just, I don't know. I don't really get into it much. I was never big on holidays as a kid. Now, that said, if you come around our house during like the big holiday season, October, November, December, we celebrate Halloween, and depending on what time of day it is when you ask us, we'll either refer to it as Samhain or Halloween. I think my wife's better at calling it Samhain than me. And we actually, Samhain's one we're really good about doing rituals at, because we do have loved ones that have passed on, and that is a time when we like to honor them. And of course, November comes around, and even though it's not a traditional pagan thing, we're totally doing Thanksgiving. We love food. We love to cook. We are eating. We're Southern. What do you expect? And then comes Christmas. And we do actually tend to celebrate both Yule and Christmas. And again, it's one of those where, do we buy Christmas gifts or Yule gifts? It's kind of what time of day is it that you're talking to us. To us, they're one and the same. It's the same holiday to us because we're not really celebrating the religious side of it on either side. So it's more the natural cycles and energy that, if we do rituals and work with it, that's what we're celebrating. But it's also more family focused for us. It's about being with the family and how that we approach and, remember and cherish our family. Halloween, they present them. There's a lot of reasons they can present differently. Some of it's to relate to the person, and some of it is because humans are very visual by nature. So they will present in a way that's actually going to best help you. So it's one part to relate to you and one part to help you. Now, the thing is, those parts are not always equal. So you will have dragons that may present far more intimidating because there's something about what it is that scares you that they want to help you get past, and they want to build you up, if that makes sense. What exactly is the Maelstrom? That's a hard one to explain, but I'll try. The Maelstrom is essentially raw, unshaped energy. A lot of people refer to it as arcane energy, but it is raw, unshaped energy. And it's pretty much right outside the void. So it's energy into the material world about as chaotic as it can get. And its entire primary purpose is to make sure nothing becomes unused, stagnant, or not moving. And for that reason, that's one of the reasons it's so hard to work with, because there's so many things that we put off, so many things that we just don't deal with. And to be exposed to that Maelstrom energy is going to just try and slam up against all those blockages and all those things that you're procrastinating on and all those things you're pushing to the side. And it's going to do everything to get them moving in one way or another. And a lot of people try to cling to them like it's everything. And the harder you cling to them or try to prevent them from moving or try to not deal with them, the harder that element's going to push. So, yeah, that one can be a very hard one to work with if you're not really, truly ready and honestly going to face everything as it comes up. Yes, I did receive a gift from a dragon at one point, but that's something I'm not allowed to share at this time. I know how to celebrate the Sabbats. I mean, I even used to lead Sabbat services for. It's just in our household we don't do a lot, and it's more about just the focus on our family. So, other than if I choose to do a private ritual for myself, we don't really do a lot. It's just one of those things. I've even done Sabbat rituals for military members. So, which if I do something for the Sabbats, it's usually something like that where I take my knowledge and expertise and donate it. Jacob, he says there's a message retracted from you. But I'm not showing it here, so okay. Whew. Okay. No, I haven't actually. Questions have been flying. I haven't actually been able to talk about the challenge. So, okay. The challenge for this coming week, if you want to participate in it. Last week we worked on self-love and self-healing. This week I actually want to work on actually the physical realm. I want you to design a meditation and spell practice. Well, let's say meditation and or a spell working to improve your physical, tangible life in some way. Whether and I want you, if it requires something that you need to do in the physical realm, I also want you to do that. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you're wanting to start buffing up and putting on muscle, design your ritual, your meditation, spell work around that. But if you're not currently going to the gym and doing anything, you also need to actually do something on the physical to, kind of transition that. Because yes, it's one thing to improve yourself spiritually, but it's also a beautiful thing to actually see it manifest, be able to manifest things on the physical realm and improve your overall just general life. So that's actually what I'm wanting us to do this week. I'm actually going to probably focus mine and double down on my weight loss, which I've been having some good results on, don't get me wrong, but that's probably going to be where I put mine. But anything, it can be finding a job, it can be prosperity, whatever. It just needs to be on the physical side. Conan the Lone Wolf. It is for the dragons. It's both a state and an element. They actually do have an element that's referred to as chaos, but it is also a state of being. Jacob, in my experience, Lucifer is not what the dragons would refer to as a true dragon. Though I do know when you're working in certain traditions, like the draconian magic tradition, they don't specifically work with dragons, but many of the entities in there take on a draconic aspect or form or shape. And Lucifer is definitely one that can present as a dragon, but the dragons do not recognize him as a true dragon because his natural true form, if you can say that for entities that change shape, would not actually be a dragon. So there is actually a differential there. But yeah, definitely in the Draconian tradition, he does present one of his many forms in the Draconian tradition is that of a dragon. But in dragon magic, if you work with him, he tends not to present as a dragon because he does kind of respect the fact that the dragons view a difference between something shaped as a dragon and a dragon. I hope that makes sense, because that is always such a complicated thing. Which I did a video on dragon magic versus draconian magic, and they do differ. They're not the same thing. Let's see how we're doing here. All right. So, Halloween, did that answer your question as far as the challenge coming up? Ross, I have not looked into draconian astrology. I don't really practice draconian magic. I stick more to dragon magic. I did see an interesting book on draconian astrology not long ago, but they wanted like $80 for it. And I'm just not ready to shell out $80 for a subject that doesn't, it's not one of my main lines of interest. So I can't really comment on that one way or the other. From some of the people that have read it, they found it very interesting, though. I see. My thing is, I don't even have a good foundation in astrology in and of itself. Y'all have heard me say before that that's usually one of my weakest areas, and which I said that, and a bunch of y'all emailed me your favorite book to start learning. Which thank you for the suggestions. I actually bookmarked all the suggestions I received because, yeah, I keep telling myself I'm actually going to dive in and learn more about it more directly. So, yeah, I now got a good stockpile of suggested books. I appreciate it. Not all good books are overly expensive, Anonymous. There's some really great books that are very affordable. Like Pencak's Temple of Witchcraft series, even though it technically is kind of witchcraft Wicca, well, it's actually a little less Wicca and more just witchcraft centered. The way he lays it out, you could actually take those lessons and apply them to almost any tradition. And those books are not very expensive at all. You can get the whole series for $80. How do I think the Love and Light magic crowd got such a strong foothold in modern magic? Partially because they were the first ones publicly in the game during the big surge when magic was coming back. And also because it was so Love and Light, it was a little bit easier to get it accepted by people. So they were working to cast off the black magic, evil magic kind of stereotype. That's one reason I do think that. And another is you don't really hear a whole lot talked about outside those areas for the longest time. And well, even still, your lodges are very hush-hush, gatekeeping, lock it up, don't talk about it. So there was no middle ground either. And then you do have the people who talk about black magic and darker magics. And there's so very few who will sit down and have a rational discussion on it. Instead, they come off as extremists way over here. And, well, it makes it very easy to put a spin on it and give it a bad name. So I think it's a combination of things that helped them do it. But we are seeing a shift, at least I've seen it in the last 6 years, where you are seeing more magicians and practitioners that are calmly, coolly approaching these topics and discussing them and coming at it in a much more rationalized way and presenting it. And because of that, we are starting to see a lot more material that is on a broader spectrum of topics, which is good, Conan, I don't really know how to answer that question because it's spiritual warfare is less about strength and more about knowledge, will, and understanding. And I'll be honest with you, I can't think of one thing where it's ever come down to where it actually had to go down to a fight of any kind that I can say I'm actually proud of, because don't get me wrong, I have no problem fighting. I will fight when need be. But I prefer to find rational solutions. And I like to think that somehow, some way, a balance was struck between those when it happened. So it's not something I really want to get into, because inevitably, if I put a label on any one thing, someone on here is going to take that and run with it as that whole grouping would be a bad thing. And I avoid that. And I've seen it way too many times to risk it. Not saying you all would do it. It's not just you all, because you got to remember, this is going to go up on YouTube. Anyone can see it, and that's just going to create I don't want to create a snowball effect. So that's just one I'll have to say, yeah, it's happened, but unfortunately, people will take any answer I give and run with it. And I'm trying to get people to break these stereotypes, not create more. The Dutch Prime Minister on Twitter. Okay, that was funny. Well, I'm not going to. I won't lie. When I have to fight, I do enjoy it. I had a very physically and aggressive profession for a while. And I've always fought to help others. I think my problem for me is I thought I enjoyed it too much. And ultimately, it's kind of that, always be ready for war, even in peacetime kind of concept for me. Okay, Ross, I just see R there. Did I miss part of that comment somehow? Oh, okay, now that makes more sense. Okay. I was like, R. Ross became a pirate on us here. Hope he brought the rum. Actually, I enjoy ceremonial magic. I really do. I know a lot of people don't. And I don't use it a whole lot in my practice in its traditional methods. I really don't. Um, there for a while, I was using it a lot because I was testing out different things, and it was, I was exploring different ceremonial currents, and I really loved it. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, the banishing ritual of the hexagram. These are some rituals I fell in love with back in the day. And the only time that I've ever attempted to learn Hebrew was, again, because of ceremonial magic. That's where the story of magicians laughing their butt off at the Southerners speaking Hebrew came from, because it's horrible. So I enjoy it. These days, I don't find it as practical for my personal practice. I do move a lot. I travel a lot. And ceremonial magic requires so many very specific things and setups and all that. That's just not practical for me at this time. I still know a lot of ceremonial magicians, and me and them shoot the shit all the time and discuss rituals. And, well, at least when I could visit them, they would occasionally have me do a ritual with them, which I didn't mind. I enjoyed it. And it's definitely worth researching and trying to gain an understanding of it, because they do have a really good system, and you can learn a lot about how energy works and moves. Not to mention, they have some really detailed diagrams and ideals on universal maps and stuff. So you can learn a lot from it. These days, the closest thing to ceremonial magic I get is the more ceremony-like rituals that the dragons give me, but they're not really comparable in process to anything in ceremonial magic. So I don't like calling them ceremonial magic for that reason. I try to respect the tradition. Well, my primary element would probably end up being chaos. That's what the dragons have always said. One of the early in my path, the chaos ruler said that I straddle the void, is how he put it. I've always got 1 foot in and 1 foot out of the void. And that's one reason that I can work with energy so well with no effects at all, presumably, is because the energy just flows in and out of me as easy as it would the void. And that comes with an upside and a downside, because it makes energy easy for me to harness, but at the same time, that doesn't mean I have the wisdom to do it. And that's gotten me in trouble before, because like y'all heard with my little stupidity first time I approached the cliff off, that was a complete wisdomless, stupid move. And I mean, it benefited me, but yeah, it was stupid. Hands down, stupid. And that's another thing, Anonymous. It is expensive. And I am a cheapskate by heart. My mom used to say I pinched my pennies till they cried. So, yeah, it's very expensive. It's not very portable. And I don't know if any of you have ever had to deal with a military move of any kind. But let me tell you, they insure the things because they know something's getting broke. You move, something's broke every time. Unavoidable. It's happening. So yeah, it's just right now I just don't do it. You could ask someone someone you trust. Definitely make sure it's someone you trust to look at the energy, but they're going to have to look at it, and you have to understand they're going to be looking at it through a diagram or spectrum that they know. So most people may only use like the 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. Of course, in Eastern mysticism, they have the other elements: metal and all those, wood. But you would have them actually look at your energetic body and see what it is comprised of mostly and where it vibrates at on a natural level. And preferably, they're going to be skilled enough to look past your emotional state, because like we said earlier, that can affect your energy. Or they're going to try and get you to calm down to a neutral state. For me, when it happened to me, the dragons just told me. I wasn't looking for it. But I did actually go to a few practitioners I trust, because I don't just take what someone tells me. And I got second, third, and fourth opinions, and they all kind of agreed. So it was just. Yeah, and that's also in the way, just keep playing with elements until you find the one you're most comfortable with. That's commonly true. I have seen cases where someone's primary element wasn't one that they were comfortable with. But that's also part of where shadow work comes in. There was a great, massive chunk of things of their own personality they were pushing to the background. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would agree with Conan and Anonymous here, because in most cases, if you're studying and practicing, you're just going to gravitate towards something. And you'll kind of just figure it out innately. But for some people, that's not good enough. They like to, I don't know, go get a reading done, I guess might be the word. Well, you wouldn't need to exercise a real dragon, because they're not going to take free will from someone. So an exorcism wouldn't be needed. Possession, like invocation, even possession rites with a dragon, willingly done. I've done that one time. Was not fully successful because dragons are all hard to work with in that level. Their energy is so freaking intense. I wasn't expecting that, because I've done possession rituals with gods, so I figured, hey, what's the difference? There's a difference. But invocation I've done quite a bit, which is actually pretty effective. I would even say it's a great form of alchemy from a draconic perspective, because you're pulling that energy so fully into yourself, and you're allowing that dragon to help make the changes that you're seeking. But again, I wouldn't do such a practice without trusting the dragon I'm working with. I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I do not do invocation first. I will do trance work, I will do evocation, but I'm picky about what I invoke, because it is such a direct connection. And I know some people who just straight out of the gate, they invoke before they evoke. So it's a personal opinion there. But yeah, exorcism, like I said, I've never seen a dragon of any kind that goes against free will. Anyways, a true dragon, I should say. We have to draw that line. But yeah, invocation is definitely doable. And I know possession's doable. It's just a matter of getting past it. But again, it would still be a willing thing, so it would only be temporary. I've never actually particularly done a premonition spell. Divinations I've always been really good at. And honestly, I'm one of those people, I don't like knowing my dreams. I don't want to dream. I I spent a lot of time setting it up so that if I dream, it's either something where an entity I work with is trying to contact me, or I see loved ones that are not nearby that I might be missing. Beyond that, just general premonitions and kind of that sixth sense of, oh shit, don't go down that road, something's down there. That's just always been a natural for me, so I've never done any spell work concerning it for myself. Yeah, the moon goddess, yeah, drawing in the moon. Yep. Yeah. And again, no, not exorcism, because that's something where you have to forcefully remove something that's not supposed to be there. Luckily, exorcisms are far more rare than people would have you believe. I appreciate the offer, Conan, but right now I am so bogged down and behind. I don't. I'm not sure I have time to set aside for it because I'm finishing the last reviews on the Dragon Magic 101 class, so it's up Wednesday as we talked about. And we are starting an outline for the Norse classes, and we're getting ready to actually start filming the Dragon Magic 102 class too. On top of that, I got all my consulting work, my students. So yeah, I'm kind of slammed right now. Mathis, each part of the course, it's laid out in a way that you're looking for a couple successes, generally speaking. But for the first few parts of the course, all you're looking for is to successfully complete the exercise. So if you can successfully complete the exercise, you're good to move on. Now, that said, you will get to a point where it's like, it's usually the very specific path workings. The first one I can think of right off the top of my head is like the Guardian Dragon path working. There's the exercise to meet your Guardian Dragon. So you can do that in a day easy. You could probably do that even the first day. Well, I won't say the first day of the course, but some people actually could end up doing that the first day of the course. But then the path working of bonding with the Guardian Dragon is at least a week's worth process that you need to take doing that work. Now you could review all the material in a day, but you still have to take the time to work through it. And every one of those sections should give you that time frame when it comes up. In the video, it should say, I try to do my best to reiterate in those, at least spend this much time doing this. And you can spend longer doing it too if you want. But yeah, like the first two sections of the course, I think it is, you could probably get through pretty quick. But those are just laying down some of the fundamentals and the foundations and stuff like that. But once you get to the Guardian Dragon, that's where it starts really slowing down because you have very specific things you have to achieve and do before you can effectively move on. It is doable. Bilocation is a thing, so it is doable. And I do it from time to time. It's just okay. I just don't really have much use for it most of the time. And any other time, if I'm just going to be sitting down and focused, I might as well meditate to boot. But that's just a general opinion. But it is doable. Yeah, as long as you are getting the successes from the information that we're reviewing in the class, and you're getting a good handle on it, you're good. Just when you get to those path workings, any course I release, do the work and make sure you got a good handle on it. And if there's a time period, spend the time to do it. There's a reason the time periods are there. Yeah. That's why anybody who comes to magic thinking magic is a quick fix, it isn't. It takes time, it takes study, it takes practice. Those people usually drift out real quickly. But I think this should probably take roughly 2 months, maybe more, to complete the whole course. And if you actually do the bonus rituals at the end, it's going to take you an easy 5 months or more. Because the bonus ritual, yeah, it's a massive ritual. And that bonus ritual is actually the ritual for crafting your staff. Or starting to craft your staff, I should say. Fully crafting it, you'd have to work through the whole series. Which you'll understand that once you get to that ritual. But yeah, so there's plenty to keep you busy for a few months. I actually suspect I'll have the second class out before anyone finishes that course plus the bonus material. I really do. All right. Let's see. We went over this week's challenge. We have answered quite a few questions tonight. And we went down a philosophical rabbit trail there for a little bit. That's actually a good question. The dragons actually refer to the primary tool by staff, cane, and wand is how they refer to it. You can choose all three, or you can pick either one. You can mix and match as need be. But yeah, perfect. Wands are even doable. Staffs are doable. Walking stick is doable. So there's wiggle room there. So anytime I say craft that staff, it's one of those three. Again, Anonymous, I have to disagree. I can get manifestations very easily out of what I want, not what I need. I will say it's easier to do what you need. But at this point in my career, I can get what I want. So yeah, to get to the want category, it takes time, practice, and understanding the energy currents and getting them focused, but it's doable. So, I mean, if that's what you mean, then yeah, I totally agree with you. And it does flow far easier for what you need. Far, far easier. Okay, well, okay, we're on the same place there then, Anonymous. Totally, yep. Now, actually, this is actually handy. I don't think I covered this in the course. I may have to film a video to tag onto it. There are practitioners who have requested to utilize something other than those three items that the dragons did approve. One practitioner I know of, she has this, I don't even know what you call it. If any of you ladies know what it is, let me know. But it's like, it has like a ring on it here, and then there's like this chain linky design that makes like a triangle right here and comes into looks like a little silver bracer, but it's only like that big. It's not a bracer. It's just a really big bracelet. And it's freaking gorgeous. And they actually approved that as her primary dragon magic tool for directing energy. So there are other options. You just have to ask the dragons for them, which, yeah. And again, it's all about that durability and that ability to make sure you don't lose it. That's the reason I went with the staff, people. I wanted something solid, durable, and I wanted it big enough to know I wouldn't lose it. Because, yes, I love my wand. I adore my wand. I have lost that wand a lot. There was actually a period where I couldn't find it for a year. I thought it was gone for good. And then it turned up. But yeah, you can... It's a flexible thing when we're talking about the dragon magic tool. Real good question there, Halloween. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and get ready to shut down and close. If you have any additional questions, the Discord channel, the link will be below. I'll make sure of it. Just pop in there. There should be an after ramblings section. Feel free to drop your questions in there concerning the ramblings. Of course, you're always welcome in general chat. We are working on the Norse classes for those that kept asking about those. We do now have a Patreon, which, as I mentioned earlier, the Patreon members did get early access to the Dragon Magic class. And that will continue to be a thing. We'll make sure the Patreon members are always getting those early access benefits. The contest for the free video consultation with me. Make sure you're commenting on all the videos so that your name gets put into the drawing. Every video you count on, your name goes in. But you only get one name per video. So if you do 5 comments on one video, you only get one name still. But make sure you're doing that because of the 4,000 hours that YouTube is tracking, we are currently up to 3,771. Those hours are climbing fast, people. You all must be binge watching my content. Which I appreciate. I highly appreciate everyone's support, your questions. Anonymous, I really appreciate you bringing in your knowledge and your expertise and sharing your points of view. This is how we learn, people. We need to share and talk rationally. I mean, he and I may not, or, well, I don't know if you're a he or a she, but Anonymous and I may not agree on everything, but there's knowledge and wisdom to be shared and had and understanding. And this is what we need to seek. We need to share this. We need to try to do that. And just because we disagree doesn't mean we need to fight about it. Because that's how we're going to make progress, people. When we start fighting and drawing lines and, walling people off just because they have a different opinion, that's where ignorance comes from. We don't want that. So, yes, I appreciate everyone for coming and sharing and asking their questions. It's been wonderful. I've had a blast. Honestly, I really look forward to these. You guys you're great. This doesn't really feel like work to me at all. I mean, if I had a beer, it'd pretty much be like having a beer with the guys. It really would. So, yeah. The Dragon Magic 101 class will officially be live Wednesday, and I'm actually wanting to have it go live at midnight. So it'd be midnight on Tuesday, so it's literally when it clicks over to Wednesday, Eastern Standard Time. They won't let me set a timer, so I have to do it manually, just so y'all know that. But I will be staying up to make sure that as quick as I can after midnight on Tuesday, I click it over, okay? So if you're interested in it, definitely pop over, check it out. And of course, Sunday, we got the Magical Coffee Hour coming up Sunday. Linda should be back. So yay, you don't have to deal with me trying to manage that mess like I did last week. And we'll go back to the normal format. And for those who don't know, you can find all the classes, the shop, all those things at workingdragonmystic.com. We did set the website up so everybody you can find it all in one search. No problem. We're happy. I'm glad you got to make part of it and enjoy it. And replays, I actually end up watching the replays half the time too. Because people ask me questions or they thank me for something I said, and it's like, wait, what? And I have to go back and it's like, oh, that's what I said. That's right. Yeah. Other than that, I'll see y'all Sunday and next week. And we do have a video coming out Tuesday. This week's video is actually going to be a detailed review of Terra Fauna, the ruler of the dragons of Earth. So, yeah. Which we actually will be revealing that the artwork that the artist did for Terra Fauna during that video as well. So definitely check that out. Because the artist worked really hard working with Terra Fauna and getting Terra Fauna's approval. So that'll be coming out. And just so y'all know, we are having more videos come out planned that's going to be more Norse-based or general-based and even modern magic based. So you're going to start seeing a slight larger mix in our videos coming out in the near future. All right. With that, I will see you all later. As always, may your path always be blessed and keep on learning. Keep on seeking, people. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.